A High-Pitched Cry for Help by Problematic _ Lana on AO3. Chapter 30. My Hero. Izuku wanted to be a hero. There were few things Shouta was sure of, but he knew for sure that his little Izuku was going to be a hero. Izuku started slowly showing interest in heroism as soon as he felt comfortable with his quirk, and his fathers were not surprised to know it was a passion of his even before his quirk came in. So, they did what any good parent would do. They nurtured his passion. It started with buying him materials to improve his analysis, by Nezu's recommendation, and soon transformed into putting him into Taekwondo classes. Admittedly, at the age of 8, Izuku wasn't any good. He was, most of the time, overpowered by his peers, who, even though they had the same age, were taller and stronger. But by the time he had his green belt, Shouta made sure to let him know that he was often overpowered too. It was then when his stealth and agility came in handy. Izuku soon understood that sometimes one hit, well delivered, was better than being the strongest in the room. He enjoyed fighting with Tenya. Even though the taller one was not in a fighting class, he was still eager to learn every trick the green one was willing to teach him. By the end of the year, Tenya had also enlisted in Taekwondo. Izuku had admitted once he was a bit sad that Kachan wouldn't get into the classes too. But the kid was still into anger management classes, and they didn't recommend putting him up against other kids. Instead, he started parkour, which was both enough to tire him out and good exercise for another hero wannabe. Yamada was delighted when Izuku started opening up to them. It started really slow, by asking for things no kid should be afraid or embarrassed to ask, and it developed into long night talks about how he felt, and he occasionally needed help to understand his own feelings. Izuku was also put into therapy. Things were going well, really well even, and Shouta knew that. But even then, the fear of his own son going into heroics was there. The idea of how many heroes ended up was nightmare material, and he couldn't fathom the idea of one day his son being the one in the position which he couldn't get out of. His own psychologist told him that those were valid fears, but at the end of the day, all he could do was to make sure he had the tools he needed for when that moment happened. And it began. Izuku's gun training. He was not going to give a 9-year-old an actual gun, not if Hisashi had a say in it, but he offered some combat lessons that included knife throwing and how to deal with an armed enemy. Nothing major, really, but it was always nice to see his son excited, and it was a great way to get some quality time and good exercise in. Shouta had to admit, it was really scary when one day he just moved a knife mid-air so that it would hit the target, and how he discovered with his data that if he was careful enough, he could manipulate air direction with low and almost imperceptible sound waves. He knew just then that he had nothing to worry about, not when his kid had the help he deserved. I love you. I really do. But don't you think this is a bit much? I mean, how many people are we hosting? Like 10? Don't be rude. He will love it. You'll see. Namari mumbled, a balloon still in her mouth as she tried talking and blowing at the same time. We'll be 8, I think. The Bakugos will send Katsuki over but have work to do, so they won't come until dinner, I think. Clarified his blonde husband, who was hanging some shiny separates around. Then why can the cake I picked up feed a small army? Shouta sighed and put the cake on the fridge. He could banter all he wanted, but the truth was that everyone he knew was just as excited as everyone else. Izuku's birthdays were always really special. The kid never asked for anything, but was made to make a list of at least 2 items he really wanted. That way, they could give it to Namuri, so she wouldn't bring anything weird into their house. Hisashi had established a family tradition a few birthdays ago, when it had been obvious that even as time went by, Izuku was having trouble asking for things in general, and at the end of the day, he appreciated more the thought behind the gift than how much he wished for it. The tradition was simple, really. Every birthday and Christmas, they would give him 3 gifts. One he needed, when he wanted, and one thing they wanted him to have. That year was extra special. Izuku had finally reached the double digits, and not only was he doing great in school, he was finally showing some signs of rapid growth preteens showed at some point. Shouta was kind of hoping he would pass the blonde demon in height soon, but he knew he was destined to be a short little broccoli. Everything was right and in place 10 minutes before they expected Izuku to come through the front door with his friends, and when Hisashi went to open it, he was in shock to find 4 kids instead of 3. "Hi, kiddos, come in." He ushered them in and looked at his husband, a bit confused. "Dada, Papa, thanks. It all looks really good. I love it." "Glad you like it, Bunny. Do you care to introduce your new friend?" Said friend was hiding behind Izuku. His hair was almost as fluffy, but a deep purple, and they couldn't see his eyes because he was looking at the ground. The kid seemed to be skittish and nervous, and if it wasn't for the fact that he was holding hands with Izuku, he would have kind of guessed his son had kidnapped another kid. "Yes, he is Satoshi. I found him in the park playing alone and asked if he wanted to come to my birthday party. He said no one had ever invited him to one, so he's a bit nervous. Can we show him around the house?" Izuku was recruiting friends in the park because he didn't think he had enough to fill his birthday table. Mocked Bakugo, and Shouta held in the will to kick him out. Maybe he will never fully understand why his son liked him in the first place. "Very funny, Kachan. If you have so many friends, I guess I shouldn't go to your next birthday party then," said the green Fluff, and he heard a contained laugh from behind. From Namuri, surely. "I was kidding." The kid backtracked, looking both annoyed and slightly amused at the new development bickering that had going on. "Izuku, please tell me the kids' guardians know they are here." "Ah, yes, he has 2 moms. I thought it was really cool. They seemed nice. They're probably a bit behind because we ran a bit. I kind of invited them too." He scratches his head, slightly embarrassed. "I should have asked. I hope it's okay." "Of course, Bunny. It's your birthday. You can invite anyone you like." Izuku hugged both his dads rapidly, and after the kid gave a timid bow, Hitoshi was, more or less, forcefully pulled to the garden, followed by Bakugo and a profusely apologetic Ida. Just a minute later, 2 tall women appeared at the door that Hisashi didn't bother to close. "Hi, we're really sorry that we just won over. I am Sai, and this is my wife Mimi. It's nice to meet you." One of the women, the shorter-haired one, gave a deep bow and shook hands with Hisashi and Namuri. Shouta was still watching the kids run up to the water balloon-filled bucket he had prepared. He would have to give poor Hitoshi a change of clothes later on. "I'm assuming you are young Izuku's parents. We're sorry for showing up unannounced, but Hitoshi's really shy, so it's really nice surprise when kids want to socialize with him," said the other one. She had a funny-looking mutation on her cheek that made her have scales, probably some kind of snake quirk. "Oh, I'm flattered, but the little blush's parents are there. I'm just a fun auntie." Shouta showed a crooked smile at the confusion and the irony in it. "I'm Shouta Aizawa. This is my husband, Yamada Hisashi. A pleasure." "Please come in. Izuku's also shy in making friends, so we're a bit surprised too. But we have plenty of space for extra guests." Both women apologized for the misunderstanding and the sudden visit, and came in. Only a few minutes later did Namai appear too, a big smile and a gift in hand. The old lady had at some point become like a grandma to Izuku, and they were delighted when she told them about a nice cute house with a garden that was on sale in her neighborhood. Shouta would never admit it, but having such a kind woman near them was a relief. With them being heroes and all, even though it never happened, it was good to have an emergency contact nearby. He was also glad to introduce Izuku outside of the hero community. Sometimes it felt like it was all the kid was exposed to. The adults went outside to watch the kids play, and to everyone's surprise, they were all playing to throw the water balloons. Even Atoshi and Ida. It was 2 teams, but at the end, no one could tell who was against who, and they opted for chasing Mike around. And if no one came to his rescue, well, They were too busy laughing. Both married couples seemed to get along, as they were a chill pair, and Shouta was glad there was no one louder than his husband there. Namai had also joined in the chat, and they were gushing about how cute the kids were, and telling embarrassing stories about them. By the time Hisashi was half dry, it was Namori's turn to step in. But she ended up terrorizing the children instead of being a target. It was to be expected. About 2 hours in, the doorbell rang again, and the Bakugos came in, bringing a present that Shouta could only guess was wrapped by Katsuki. It was kind of obvious that its contents were some type of figurine. When the sun started to come down, the dinner time was approaching. The kids were sent to dry themselves. As expected, they all came looking like mini Izukus, due to them having to borrow his clothes. Except for Ida, of course. You could never catch him unprepared. They had pizza and a lot of junk food for dinner. Nothing fancy, against Ida's wishes, but they all enjoyed the snacks and jokes flowing in the warm and comfortable atmosphere. At one point, or another, the kids disappeared into Izuku's room, who was most probably squealing information out of their new gang members about his quirk and writing frantically an entry about him. Later on, he came back down to take a few cards and board games with him, so it seems there was nothing to worry about. Namai was nervous, rearranging the houseplants as she often did when she felt uneasy. She confessed she was worried that Izuku would not like her present this year, and that she had a replacement in case that was the case. Hisashi assured her, after seeing a photo of said present, that he would love it. And so it came. Cake time. Most of the time, Izuku's birthdays were during the day, but he had asked to have a pajama party this time, so they had chosen to cut the cake at midnight, even if usually everyone was asleep by that time. When the clock turned 12, the date was finally June 15. Everyone surrounded Izuku in singing happy birthday. The candles lit his smiling face, and he couldn't help but wonder what Izuku had wished for when blowing them out. He wondered if it was something he could provide for him, or if it was something for the future only himself could get. But by the looks of it, it wasn't something that worried him too much. It was a warm picture. They just got better and better every year. Hisashi was crying at how old their baby was getting, and Shouta was smiling as he helped Izuku get the cake out of his hair, courtesy of Katsuki, of course. He was also a bit overwhelmed by the idea of time going so fast, but he stayed strong, knowing that Izuku was prone to cry while opening his presents. It was actually quite the miracle that he hasn't already. He would have to invite Tensei for dinner as a thank you for covering tonight's shift so he could be with his family. One by one, they all hugged him, even his new friend, who seemed a lot calmer and cozier now. Ida went on a lecture about how smashing someone's face into a cake was both dangerous and disrespectful, but even he was having fun. When everyone had a hair-free piece of cake, they all sat around Izuku to see him open his presents. The couple apologized once more for getting there empty-handed, but there was nothing they could have done after they were suddenly at a stranger's birthday party. The first present he opened was Ida's. It was a long but thin box, and Izuku made sure to unwrap it carefully, as he always did with Ida's presents. Shouta still didn't really understand why. Out of the box, he pulled a strip of what at first looked like stickers, and Izuku was soon smiling widely. It was planet and stars that stick to the ceiling that lit up in the dark. Sadly, Pluton is in the set, even if it is no longer considered a planet. My apologies, said the blue-haired kid, pulling his glasses with a smile. That's great. Thanks, Ida. We can put them on tonight. He got up and gave him a short hug. Ida always gave thoughtful gifts, and he wondered if this had something to do with the fact that Izuku still slept with a nightlight on. My turn, extra, followed Katsuki, who was pushing himself in between the hug in an attempt of putting his gift in his friend's hand. Izuku laughed it off and grabbed it, first shaking it and taking his time to mess with the blonde. The gift was a medium-sized box that was very poorly wrapped in shiny yellow and red gift paper. After a minute of hearing Baku complain about how slow he was, he finally opened and took the All Might figurine out of the box to admire it from all angles. "It's the Silver Age one! How did you get it?" "It doesn't matter. Now you won't look like a loser in the park with the one bastard chew." "That's so mean. Bastard just wanted to play too." As if summoned, Bastard left the couch and came to the birthday boy for cuddles. Izuku made a fake attempt to hug Bakugo, who just responded by making gagging noises and moving away while the rest laughed. Next came Nomuri. Izuku grabbed a decent-sized box and looked at it very awkwardly as soon as he picked it up. "The box is symbolic. Your gift is in the garage, and don't pretend you didn't see it. I can already tell you tried writing it," Nomuri said, half laughing and pointing at his scrapped knee. Izuku blushed profusely and scratched at his neck and nodded. His auntie opened up her arms, and he ran up to her for the hug she had been hoping for all day. "You told me you fell!" yelled indignantly. I fell from the bike?" Yamada's laugh was sure to be heard in the whole neighborhood, and Shouta allowed it for one more second before activating his quirk and hiding his own grin. After thanking his auntie for the not-so-surprise, they all decided it would show the bike to the other kids after opening the rest of his presents. It was sure Bakugo would try to ride it and fail, because it was slightly too big for them yet, and it would be a lie to say he didn't want to see him fall too. "Okay, I guess it's my turn. That one is for me, dearie," said Nama. A nervous smile plastered on her face as Izuku grabbed the soft paper wrapper. Nomuri always liked to wrap her presents in newspaper, and she chose carefully the news on it, depending on the person she was giving it to, and would even go as far as putting some perfume in it before actually wrapping it. It became sort of a tradition to also give her presents in newspaper. Izuku would select for Christmas or birthdays. He would usually choose some with flowers on it, for her love towards gardening. Izuku took his time seeing the news first. It was about a rookie hero that had made his debut recently, and Hisashi could almost imagine Izuku cutting and plastering part of it in the entry he would do, if he hadn't already, about the hero. He put the newspaper aside to analyze later and unfolded what looked like a sweater. "You know how I started knitting, right? Well, I remember the first time I saw you and couldn't think of anything else," she whispered softly. Izuku went red as an apple and should have wished she understood the reference of their first meeting. The sweater was black with beige shoulder pads and a gray high neck with a weird pattern on it and a cape of some sorts. It was probably a size or two too big for Izuku. It seemed no one could pinpoint his size correctly. "Is that me?" whispered Hisashi in shock. Cute little tears accumulating on his eyes, as if it wasn't the 7th time today he was about to cry. If he paid enough attention, he could see it. It had some resemblance to Present Mike's hero costume, but they couldn't quite understand where the cape came from. "The first time I came into Nana's shop, I asked if she had any Present Mike merch, and then I told her he should wear a cape," he explained, his eyes shining with a nostalgia that was odd in him. Immediately, he put it on, moving his hands to pet the soft material, and then using the sleeve to wipe a wannabe tear. "I love it, Nana. Thank you," he whispered in a deep hug he gave her. His parents could do nothing but be grateful at the sight of Izuku having such a lovely woman in their son's life. After their short, emotional moment, Izuku prepared himself for the last 3 gifts of the night. He always loved to leave them at the end, as much as he always left the best part of any food to eat at last. He decided to go first for the "something you need" gift. They all had the same wrapping paper, but had a little note on top, so he knew what he was opening. It was a medium to small, flat box that resembled, to some point, Ida's, just not as long. Izuku took it out and smiled brightly at it. It was a small device called Kindle, that older generations used for the sole purpose of reading. Newer and more complex ones haven't made sense, but both Hisashi and Aizawa knew that Izuku didn't want the latest one, nor the most expensive one. Izuku was always worried about the price of things, and it took him a while to unlearn that money was a problem that kids didn't need to worry about, no matter what they spent on him, nor how much things cost. It was okay to want things, and it was okay to not like things that had already cost money. But at the end of the day, this was something practical that he would use to read whenever he wanted. This is so cool, thanks, Dads. You're welcome, kiddo. Just make sure if you disassemble it to see what's inside, you have a printed copy on how to put it back together. Yamada joked, making an obvious reference on how Izuku loved to know how things worked. The second gift was something you want, and Shouta was sure he would regret buying this. But, well, he was allowed to spoil his nerdy son every once in a while. This was, by far, the biggest box. It was heavy, too, so Izuku made sure not to shake it, nor to move it too harshly, probably guessing what it was based on size alone. Lately, Izuku had started doing biology experiments under Nezu's guidance, and so the kid had been eyeing on the internet for far too long for a small set to make his own experiments at home. He was most interested in bacteria and germs, which Shouta decided he didn't want too much about, so they decided to buy him a bacteria growth kit, which mainly included a small microscope and various types of glass containers to collect, disassembled, and generated germs and bacteria. Later on, Shouta would probably have to put limits on not putting any bacteria cultures on their fridge. They most definitely didn't want that thing close to their food. The other kids came close to watch the whole kit unfold, and they all marveled at the many pieces they would probably take a few hours to put together. The image in the box would have to do for now. Now I can download some materials about germ cultures, he mumbled to himself, soon falling into a spiral of things he could get germs from. Thank God we didn't choose the chemistry kit, mumbled Hisashi, giving Shouta a surprised look when Izuku started assembling the microscope without the need of an instruction. He could only agree. The kid was destined to eventually make some kind of nuclear bomb if left unsupervised. Izuku had to take a moment to relax himself, for how excited he was before he could put the kid aside to open the last gift. Something we want you to have, Shouta mumbled, suddenly and unreasonably nervous. Admittedly, it was probably the most expensive gift of all, and he didn't know how he would feel if Izuku didn't like it. But it was a scenario he took into consideration as he wrapped it. After all, Izuku had never been ungrateful. It was something pretty obvious to see when they had to make his friends take him out to play so he wouldn't help in his own birthday party. Hell, you could give the kid a candy and then take it away and he would still thank you. Even if he didn't like it, it would be nice knowing that he would have it. Izuku grabbed the last present in hand and shook it. No sound came from it. It was soft, but not as soft as a sweater would be, and definitely not harder than a box. It was as if some type of unboxed, thin plastic was inside, and Izuku found himself at a complete loss at what it could possibly be. Hisashi grabbed his husband's hand, a bit too hard in excitement, and he returned the gesture, a bit less excited and a bit more nervous. As soon as Izuku realized what it was, he gasped audibly. The gray, hard fabric sat in his hands as they trembled in excitement. It's a bit rattly from use, Shouta said, rapidly, as if feeling the need to excuse himself. Is this a capture weapon? Their bunny's voice was shaking and filled with emotion that had only seen on him a number of occasions. It's actually my first ever capture weapon, he said, which explained the wear it had. I thought it was time I passed it down to you. Shouta moved closer, just enough to pat the kid on the back. Hisashi left him, because he knew this moment would be important for both of them, and because he was already crying and didn't want to smear any snot on the present. The mere touch on his shoulder seemed to be enough to open the waterfalls. Izuku launched himself at Shouta, who fell on his ass as he didn't catch him on time. They were left there as Izuku cried his eyes off while mumbling, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you," way too low and snot-filled for him to fully understand. He decided to ignore his own eyes watering in order to better hug his son. His legacy the one he wanted to make a better world for. Soon, Hisashi joined in, because hell, everything was already covered in tears. Shouta hugged his family, as tight as he could, for once not caring about peering eyes and camera flashes. He hugged them because they made his life better, worthy. He hugged them because they were the one thing he would rather die than see get hurt. He hugged them because he was scared of the future, because it was unknown. He hugged them because he wasn't scared of going forward if it was by their side. He hugged them because in their arms was the only place he felt perfectly safe. He hugged them because unknowingly they saved him. Yes, Izuku was going to be a hero. If only he knew that in his eyes, he already was. This was such a cute fanfic. I love this fanfic. Oh my god. This was such a cute ending. I didn't expect it to be this long. Guys, I'm crying. You're crying? I'm crying. We're both crying here. Crying festivities. Crying festivities. Festivities. Whatever. Point taken is I'm sobbing, you're crying, we're sobbing, we're both crying, we're both emotional here, okay? This is an emotional time. Emotional, okay? Alright, because I'm crying. And you're crying. And we're both crying. This is a crying fest here, alright? Okay. This was such a sweet, I love that ending where obviously Izuku gets the capture weapon, which by the way, thinking about that now with Izuku's quirk, holy fucking shit, that sounds... If I was a villain, I would stay clear from Izuku because, okay, first of all, capture weapon's already scary as itself. Add that the fact that Izuku can manipulate things with sounds. Think about it. Think about it. Think about it. Like, sit there and think about it. This man is... I'm scared. I would be scared as a villain. I would be scared as a villain. I would be petrified. Problematic and Sasana, thank you so much for letting me podfic this. It was a pleasure to podfic this, and I very much appreciated this. I think this whole fanfic was so sweet and cute and wonderful and amazing. Now, on to the announcement for the next one. We're gonna do another Gen fanfic. We're gonna do another Dadzawa Eraserhead fanfic, alright? It's gonna be Someone Better by I_am_Ellie. I'm just gonna shorten it to I am Ellie. The summary is, Shouta Aizawa spent his life with people leaving him. They constantly knew, the only constants he knew were his gymnastics and self-defense classes, his boyfriend, and his best friend. He spent most of his life being lonely. And then he got Izuku. Or the story of a little boy going to live with his uncle, who absolutely has no idea what he's doing. It is a very sweet fanfic, I promise you. It is super sweet, it's super nice. It is angsty. It is angsty. It is sweet because obviously, you know, whatever, but it's super angsty. Don't come in thinking that it's going to be like a high-pitched cry for help. I genuinely think it's a little bit worse than a high-pitched cry for help because Izuku literally has to go to therapy. It's heavy. It's heavy on the angst, but it's super sweet in the sense that we get to see, you know, sweet, nice moments. Each chapter is probably going to be 20-30 minutes long. It's going to be a lengthy one. I'm probably going to spend an hour on every recording, and it's going to be a lengthy one. It's going to be a lengthy one. It's going to be one of those where I have to sit down and buckle up, you know? But I do it for you guys. And we have Aizawa Autistic Aizawa. And you know what? I love the portrayal of Aizawa being autistic in this one. It was very interesting. It was very nice. And let's just say it's a really cool fanfic, and I hope you guys stay tuned for that one. It is what the fuck is happening outside. It is super sweet, super nice. It's also super fucking angsty. And unfortunately, the second part of that series is uncompleted. It is part of a series called Little Cabbage, with the first fanfic being Someone Better, which is 26 chapter long with a little over 100k words, and then the second one, which is a little over 90k words and 21 chapters long. And let's just say it's called Someone Better, and it is not updated. It has last been updated October 7th, 2022. So about to be 3 years. Do I think it's gonna get updated again? Probably not. I still need to ask permission for the second one, to podfic the second one, but if I do get permission to podfic that one, I will podfic it, even if it's not completed. Before it deters you, it is really, really good, even if it's not completed. I'm normally a person who doesn't like to start uncompleted ones. Trust me, I fucking hate it. But I accidentally started this one, and you know what? I don't regret it. I would do it again. So yeah, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.